Drake offered something wild that I had never considered, but that night altered everything. To my surprise, the prospect of getting intimate with 3 men captivated me. You'll be surprised by how unexpectedly the night unfolded. I vividly recall that hot summer evening when I had just arrived home after a tiring workday, leaving my spouse exhausted. Drake was already in the living room with a glass of whiskey. His gaze fixed on me with an intensity I hadn't seen before. There was something odd about him that night, and the air felt thick with expectancy. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so I can continue to bring you intriguing factual stories like this one. And don't forget to watch this video until the finish, because it will be extremely interesting. As I sat alongside him, I could feel his eyes following my every movement. "How was it at work?" he asked, his voice surprisingly gentle and almost seductive. I let out a worn-out sigh, as usual, but this one was long and exhausting. Drake, on the other hand, was not paying attention to what I was saying. Instead, he gently rested his hand on my thighs. Although I was accustomed to his tenderness, tonight was unlike any other. His fingertips traced up my leg, causing my heart to race as I turned to face him. His eyes were full of hunger, a new and exhilarating need. "I've been thinking," he continued, moving in closer, his voice almost a whisper, "about us and what we need." His words sent a shudder down my spine, and I shuffled in my seat, unsure where we were heading. "What do you mean?" I inquired, my voice wavering slightly. Drake smiled, his fingers rising, his breath warm against my ear. "I believe we require something different, something to liven things up." I swallowed deeply, sensing a knot forming in my stomach that threatened to escalate the situation. I spoke again, uncertain about his true intentions. He nodded, his lips touching my neck. "I hope to see you with other men." His words sent shockwaves through my body, leaving me momentarily stunned. His idea raced through my mind, and I scanned his face for any signs of hesitation, but all I saw was pure passion. "You want to see me with different men?" "Drake?" I questioned in a scarcely audible voice. He nodded, his eyes black with hunger. "Yes, but not all males. I want you to be with 3 powerful and gorgeous men, Scott Thomas and Ross. I want you to lose." My mind was spinning as I imagined myself in their arms, feeling their contact and experiencing something insane. I never expected Drake to contemplate the thought of sharing me, but when I looked into his eyes, I saw excitement and the thrill of the forbidden. An odd part of me wondered how it would feel to be desired by men other than my spouse. I shifted uneasily as a wave of heat swept over me. "I don't know, Drake," I stammered. Unsure how to answer, he grabbed for my hand and softly squeezed it. "Although this seems unusual, it will be extraordinary. You will be delighted, and I will be present to witness your success. There's nothing to worry about." His words flooded over me, and I found myself considering the possibility. Could I actually accomplish this? Could I be with 3 other men while my husband was watching? Although it was considered taboo, it ignited a spark within me. I felt a sensation within me that I hadn't experienced in a considerable amount of time. I looked into Drake's eyes for any signs of trepidation, but all I saw was unflinching confidence. He wanted me to have this experience. The notion of pleasing him gave me a rush of exhilaration. "Okay," I muttered, barely recognizing my own voice. "I will do that." Drake's eyes brightened, and he moved in to kiss me, his lips warm. "You won't regret this," he promised, enthusiasm coloring his voice in the days leading up to Drake's plan. The night was full of anticipation and nervousness. Every time I considered what was to come, my stomach fluttered with dread and need. I tried to concentrate on my routine, but the excitement lingered in the back of my mind, teasing me with possibilities. Finally, night arrived. Drake had organized everything. Scott Thomas and Ross were already at the motel when we arrived. As we entered the room, my palms sweated from anxiousness. The image of 3 powerful, confident men standing there with smiles on their faces moved something inside me. They were tall and muscular, and their dark skin glowed in the mild light. Each emanated power and might, and I could feel their gazes on me, undressing me. My breath caught in my throat. I felt exposed but strangely empowered. Drake stood with me, his hand on my back and guiding me. "Don't be shy," he said with excitement. "This is for you. I hope you enjoy it." I looked at him, heart beating, and saw hunger in his eyes. He wanted to see me with these men, and as terrified as I was, I couldn't deny that I wanted it as well. Slowly, I moved forward, shaking with excitement. The men watched me, their eyes dark with need, and as I approached, the tension in the room increased. I found myself standing at the brink of something significant. Excited, ready to dive in, Scott stretched out his hand, brushing against my arm, sending a spark of electricity through my body. His touch was firm but gentle, and I leaned into him, breath hitching as his fingers trailed up mine. Our eyes met, and I saw a raw hunger that matched mine. Immediately, his lips were soft and warm on mine. His kiss became more intense as he drew me in, my heart beating as I melted into him, his powerful arms clutching me tightly. I could feel the heat pouring from his body, his muscles straining beneath my hands behind me. Drake is watching, his eyes scorching into my flesh. I caught him looking over my shoulder, and the expression on his face shot a rush of pleasure through me. He wanted me to lose myself in another man's embrace. Thomas stepped closer, putting his hand around my waist and pressing his body against mine from behind. I could feel his breath on my neck and his lips brushing against my skin as he kissed me gently. My body twitched from longing. The intensity of it all raced through my thoughts. I'd never experienced such an overwhelming sensation of desire from 3 men before. It was intoxicating. I found myself becoming lost in it, my body responding to their every touch. Drake's voice burst through the clouds. "You're gorgeous," he mumbled his voice. "I adore seeing you like this." Words boosted my confidence, and I returned my attention to the men. Their touches became more urgent as they encircled me. I felt the heat radiating. As they engulfed me in warmth, my breath quickened as their hands explored my body, each touch sending sensations through me. Being the object of their desire and the center of their attention gave them a sense of empowerment. Scott put his hand against my back. I could feel the hardness and readiness in every inch of him as he drew me in until our bodies were in complete harmony. As he approached me for another kiss, his breath was scorching against my cheek. His breath was not soft. It was ferocious and hungry, as if he were starving for me. His tongue split my lips, deepening the kiss, and I sensed the yearning in his touch behind me. Thomas's hand slid along my sides, tracing the shape of my waist before sliding up, touching my breasts through His touch was firm and powerful. The sensation of his thumbs brushing against my nipples caused me to gasp, eliciting ecstasy that penetrated my very being. The tension inside me stretched like a coil, winding tighter with each second Drake was staring, grounding me as I felt myself sinking into the heady draw of the moment his eyes locked into mine, displaying his raw hunger and enjoyment of seeing me. He wasn't simply a spectator. He was a part of the electrifying connection that was developing between me and the gorgeous Manu. Ross said, his voice low and smooth, I've been waiting. Touch you. Feel your lovely flesh." I shivered at his words, reflexively leaning back into him, his arms around my waist. The way they handled me made me feel claimed, and I sunk into it, succumbing to the intensity. Every inch of my skin tingled with pleasure as their hands moved freely over my body. The man behind me. His fangs grazed the sensitive skin on my neck as his hands slipped down to my thighs. I gasped when his fingers slipped. His fingers slipped beneath my skirts, caressing my bare legs, and I could feel the heat building between my thighs, the aching of want nearly intolerable. "Do you like this?" he asked. "Tell us how it feels against my flesh," with his dark, sensual voice. "I love it," I muttered, my voice trembling along with me. I've never felt anything like it. It was correct. This was unlike anything I had ever encountered. The intensity and rawness of their touches triggered something primordial and ferocious within me. Scott smiled, his hand tangled in my hair as he drew me closer for another kiss. This kiss was softer and more deliberate, teasing but full of hunger. His thumb stroked my cheek as he deepened the kiss, and I murmured softly, lost in the sensation behind me. Ross's fingertips continued to tease my thighs, getting closer to where I wanted him most, but never quite satisfying my cravings. My breath came out in ragged gasps as he continued to torture me, prolonging the moment and increasing the tension until it was nearly painful. "Please, please," I murmured, my voice barely audible but full of need. "Please do not quit." Ross chuckled quietly. His breath warmed my flesh as he gently kissed my neck. "My shoulder is old. We are not going to quit." He promised a low growl. The knot of longing began to tighten within me, growing more powerful with each passing second. My body trembled, torn between an intense want for release and the delightful anticipation of what was to come. Scott kissed me one last time, pulling back slightly, his dark eyes fixed on mine. He grinned and said, "You're incredible," with admiration in his voice. "I can't wait to watch how you react to a quick move." He pulled the straps of my dress from my shoulders, allowing the fabric to fall to the floor in a gentle heap around my feet. I stood there in my underpants, exposed and vulnerable. But instead of being timid or embarrassed, I felt strong. They gazed at me with raw passion, and it made me feel alive, like I were the most beautiful woman in the world. Drake's stare was also on me, full of pride and lust as he watched me yield to the moment. His encouragement increased my desire, making me want it even more. Thomas moved closer, his hands on my waist, leading me to the bed. "Lie down," he said, his voice calm yet forceful. "We are going to make you feel so amazing." I obeyed, my pulse beating with expectation as I lay back on the silky blankets, tingling with longing. The three men surrounded me, touching, kissing, and teasing, sensory overload. Their combined touches made my mind spin, and my body aches with the yearning for one of them to kiss me passionately. His hand intertwined,